Well, joining me now, Bradford Labour Councillor Mohammed Amran. Councillor, thanks ever so much for your patience. I know you've been waiting there for a while, so we do appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Let's just start with the specifics and looking back to that week in 2001 and the months that followed and the arrests that were made and the sentences, long sentences handed down to some of the rioters. I made the point in my introduction there that they were exemplary sentences. People were made an example of, and that helped deter future outbreaks of violence. Do you agree?
I think they were. I think they were long sentencing, and it was the first time in history that sentences like 5-year plus were given to rioters in any city.
Take us back. I mean, were you in Bradford on particularly the night of the worst violence when the Labour Club I described was attacked and set on fire with people inside? A Labour Club, you know, funded and affiliated to the party you're now a member of.
Yeah, I mean, I was out on the day of the disturbances. We went to a rally in the Centenary Square to protest against the right-wing groups that were going to come. It was a really peaceful rally, and I could remember the late Marsha Singh was addressing the crowd, and he was saying, "We've had a really good day, and you need to now make your way home." And then, obviously, a disaster struck in terms of an Asian youth got attacked by some known fascists going past a pub, and that then sparked a big-scale riot. In terms of the Manningham Labour Club, I remember that night because I went inside and shouted to find anyone there, but I realised later on, when I spoke to some of the victims, they were hiding in the toilets and they were scared. So they wasn't saying yes or no, but I physically myself went inside the Labour Club to make sure that there wasn't people in there. But unfortunately, there were people hiding in the toilets.
Community tensions were high at the time, weren't they? As you mentioned, there were rumours, and more than rumours, that members of the BNP or other far-right groups were meeting in a pub. But also, this was something that was happening across the Pennines, wasn't it? It wasn't just Bradford. I mentioned some of those northern mill towns.
Yeah.
It was Burnley, it was Oldham, it was elsewhere.
I mean, the threat in terms of the BNP and National Front and other extreme groups was quite high because they were provocating the young, especially Pakistani young people. And in terms of the Pakistani young people, they feel part of Britain. They feel Britain is their home. Bradford is their home. So when someone comes and says, "You're not welcome here," they can't go anywhere else. Bradford is seen as their home, and that's where, you know, generations have been living. And even people like myself, you know, our kids are going to grow here. We live here. We own property here. We kind of work here. So we've got nowhere else to go. Bradford is our home.
As a Labour councillor, what did you make of the success? I mean, he didn't win, but he did well, George Galloway in Batley, and he seemed to be reaching out to young Muslims in particular who don't feel that your party represents them anymore.
I mean, the thing is, the problem with George Galloway, he's a well-spoken individual, and he plays with people's hearts. He picks up on subjects which people have got concerns with.
That's politics.
You know,
Mohammed, that's politics. That's what politics.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, we've had George Galloway in Bradford, and I seen him, and you know, he beat a sitting Labour councillor when he came to Bradford. But in the 5 years, he didn't do anything. He didn't represent the constituency. His office didn't open. He didn't deliver for the local people. Local people want a local MP who could represent their views in Parliament, in the local authority, towards the police, anywhere. George Galloway was never seen in Bradford in the 3-4 years he spent in Bradford.
Somebody who was in Bradford not so very long ago, and I count him a friend of mine, is Ed Husain. For those people who aren't familiar with Ed Husain, he was somebody who embraced radical Islam. He became an Islamist as a young man, and he's been on quite a journey since. And he's written a book called Amongst the Mosques. He travelled around Britain, different parts of Britain's Islamic community, and in Bradford and elsewhere, but in Bradford certainly, he felt that there was still strong evidence that people were living absolutely parallel lives, and it was possible in Bradford to be a young Pakistani, Mapuri heritage Muslim, and never really come across anybody who wasn't from your community. And he even talked about what he described as no-go areas. I know it's a very inflammatory phrase. Do you recognise it?
I mean, the thing is, I have an issue around segregation, but no-go areas, I kind of totally disagree because Bradford doesn't have them. And I said to the BBC a couple of weeks back, I go across the whole district in areas like Bingley, Ilkley, and all that. And people are so welcoming. People are engaging with you. And I think more people in Bradford, especially Pakistani young professionals, are engaging with different faiths, different religions, and are also getting involved in community activities across the board. We're doing integration work against, white working class kids on council estates, mixing Asian kids with them. So we are working hard in Bradford and we are bringing communities together. You will always get the negative about Bradford because, certain areas are, 90% Asian or 90% white. But there is a lot of integration and community cohesion going on in Bradford.
Do you worry, Mohammed? I mean, you're somebody who's engaged with the political process. You've got a successful political career. Do you worry that there are people who aren't seeing democracy and the usual outlets as a means of going forward and having a conversation? And I say that in the context, and Ed Husain touches on this, that there's a particular type of mosque in Bradford and parts of the north of England which is ultimately funded or was funded by Saudi petrodollars, and it does peddle a particularly hardline theology. What do you make of that?
I mean, let me be honest with you. Many years ago, when someone said, "Would you like to go in the political arena or become a councillor?" And I said, "No, I'll never be a councillor." But I am a councillor now. I represent views, and one thing I make it quite clear is that we must engage with grassroots communities, and especially bring young people on board. Whatever I do in the council or in my political, I always carry the community. I always engage with the community. I always go out there and speak to the community because it's so important that we engage with grassroots communities. It doesn't matter who they are. I represent a ward which is 50% Asian and 50% white, but I kind of work across all communities. And if you come with your cameras with me to visit the white people, the Asian people, the African, they will say this councillor is always engaging with us. He will respond to our inquiry. He will help us.
No,
it doesn't matter what colour you are.
I absolutely get that. But just on that final point I was making about people who choose not to be political, who choose only to be theological, and that Bradford was heavily invested in by a certain stream of Wahhabism from Saudi Arabia. And these are the people, in a sense, who we have to worry about, say some.
I do say, when I go out there campaigning, people say we don't want to get involved because we don't believe in this sort of democracy. We shouldn't get involved in political parties. But I always debate and I encourage them. You must do because we represent you. We want to listen to your views. There's no point sitting outside the fence and not being involved because if you want to make a city better, everyone must engage and work with each other.
Mohammed Amran, really good to talk to you. Appreciate your time.